Hi, my name is Ebenezer Safuadu, and welcome to my YouTube channel once again. If you've been following the channel, you know that I've been interviewing the Power BI gurus, trying to help the people behind the scenes and trying to get the people who understand the tool to throw some light into the tool itself and how it can benefit individuals and organizations alike. Today, we are privileged to have Chris Webb. He's a principal program manager at Microsoft. So we are happy to have somebody inside the team who knows the ins and the outs of the Power BI tool. So my guest today in the Power BI series is Chris Webb, a principal Microsoft programs manager. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, Chris. So, Chris, tell us about yourself for my user's sake, so as we know your background and where you are now and what you do.
Okay, sure. So I work at Microsoft on something called the Power BI Customer Advisory Team. This is part of the Power BI product group. And we do basically two things on the customer advisory team. We work with some of the largest customers in the world to make sure that they are happy. We deal with all of those kind of difficult problems they have, make sure that Power BI works well for them. And at the same time, when we're working with customers, we find out what they like and what they don't like, gather feedback and requirements, and take that back to the rest of the Power BI product group. And so, when somebody inside Microsoft is thinking about a particular feature and thinking, how should it work? What's the customers want? We can provide real evidence from customers, or we can kind of link people up directly with customers so they can have a conversation and make sure that we build the products in the way that customers want, rather than just guessing.
Okay, so to make sure that there's fine tuning, there's feedback from the customer point of view. So you actually take feedback from customers and feed it into the loop of the Power BI product itself.
Exactly. It's this is what Power BI is all about. We're meant to be using evidence and data rather than just gut feeling, and that's how we build Power BI the product. There are lots of different ways we do it. So you've seen ideas.powerbi.com, which is where we get people to vote on different features and functionality. And we get feedback in lots and lots of different ways, from customers, from users directly, from big customers, from small customers, just about everybody.
Okay. So in the nutshell, you're saying that at Microsoft, you are trying to replicate what you are preaching, in the sense that
absolutely.
Yeah, using the data to define the product.
Yes, because let's face it, it's the everybody has the same problem, which is that when you're trying to make a decision about what to do, whether it's us on the Power BI team about which features to build, or any business, when you're making a decision, it's so tempting just to make that decision based on how you feel, your opinion. Everybody has an opinion. They feel like, oh, we should do this, we should do this. It's actually really difficult, and it takes a lot of effort to take decisions based on data. But that's what Power BI is all about. We try and encourage our customers to take decisions based on data. So I guess it's kind of only right that we should be doing the same things ourselves.
Any Power BI user knows that. From 2016 to date, your updates have always taken into consideration customer feedback. So sometimes you just get a new update and you're like, wow, these people might have just understood what I wanted. So it's a nice feeling to get, as a customer, to know that, okay, you are complaining about something last month, and the following month it is resolved, and it feels good. And I'm sure that is how you're having a lot of your customers become your evangelists or your promoters, because once they use the tool, they get results for what, like you're saying. Customers we're all using data, we're all using the tool. And once I face a problem and I ask that is resolved, virtually some other people are also, especially when you're voting on your platforms. I think we'll get into that, especially you choosing the best voted ideas to implement in the new announcements that you made. So that's wonderful. Wow. All right.
I mean,
so
it's difficult. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say,
continue.
But it's difficult because there are so many ideas that people have, and even things that are top voted sometimes can be quite difficult to implement, and it takes us quite a long time to do these things. But yeah, it's I think it is part of why people love Power BI so much, because they see it change so quickly. And you're right, if you're kind of, maybe not angry, but you're missing a feature, there is people feel confident that the feature is going to come along at some point, because we go so quickly, we add things so quickly.
Wow, can you hear me, Chris?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay. So I mean, that's a product driven by data. So definitely it's a data product. Product driven by the sentiments and the feedback of customers. And like you say, every customer attests to the fact that you would always get your solution in Power BI. Over the years, you've really evolved. Wow. So how long have you been with the team?
So it's coming up to 2 years that I've been at Microsoft. Before that, I had my own kind of small consultancy and training company. Small because there was just me in it. And I did that for 13 years. So I was working on my own, doing, first of all, analysis services stuff, and then Power Pivot and Power Query, and then Power BI. And then before that, I did a variety of kind of permanent jobs. I worked at Microsoft, in fact, for a couple of years as well. But yeah, that's where I come from.
Wow. So nice to know your background and knowing that you know the inside of the Power BI. So let's go straight to Power BI. And I think that it starts always with data transformation, which you have a very amazing tool, the Power Query Editor, which can, to me, it's okay for me with all my transformation. I normally do not use any other tool. So if a new user wants to use the Query Editor, what are the easiest ways that they can learn the tool, the Query Editor?
I mean, I think that this is kind of, everything I say here is going to be true probably for the whole of Power BI. Everybody also has different ways of learning, but the way I've always learned everything, and this is true of Power Query, is that I don't always have real problems to solve. I mean, I'm lucky that my job does involve seeing a lot of real customer problems and solving them. But what I like to do is just, use some free kind of open data, and there's a lot of open data available now. For every government across the world is publishing lots of useful open data, and if it's interesting, if I've got a personal interest in it, what I will do is I'll just play around with it, bring it into Power BI, and then just see how I can go with it. And I think that's true with Power Query, and I think that's true with the whole of Power BI. Just get some data that you're interested in, have a kind of end result. Well, and I suppose the end result is that you want to analyze this data and understand it and see what's there. And then once you've got the starting point, which is the data, and the end point, which is the analysis you want to do, that motivates you to to kind of learn the tools to get from the raw data down to the end point. Yeah, and like I said, you don't always get the opportunity to do what you're interested in through your ordinary day-to-day work. So you've got to really have something that's have some data that's maybe not work related but interesting, and make the time just to be able to play and just to see what you can do. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm the kind of person that I find Power Query and I find Power BI really, really interesting, and I'm quite happy to spend my free time playing around with data, just seeing how stuff works and making it do things and things. And that's kind of where my blog started from, really. Just to be able to, find all the cool stuff that I've learned, write it down so I don't forget it, to be honest, as well. Because if I didn't write it down, I would forget it completely.
Definitely. So personally, I mean, with this background that I always look out for data sets around the world. I mean, there are various ways people can get data and then start the practice. But for instance, okay, so the person has now moved from step one by finding the data. So how does the person practically learn the query editor?
Okay.
Especially using yourself as an example. How do you learn query editor? Like, which resources do you use to learn the query editor?
So I think there are a lot of great sites out there. So something that I would definitely promote is there is a new website that the Power Query team have created, which is actually, if you just go to powerquery.com, that's now the new home of everything Power Query related. So if you wanted to learn Power Query, that should be the first place that you go to. They have a blog. Yeah, exactly. Right. Just go to powerquery.com. I think it redirects to powerquery.microsoft.com or something. But if you just type powerquery.com in your browser, you'll go there. And they've got a lot of great resources. They've spent a lot of time with their documentation recently. And there are lots and lots of great examples there. There are links to blogs and books and forums. The Power Query, there's what used to be the TechNet forums, and I think it's now answers.microsoft.com. The Power Query team are actually pretty good at answering questions on there. So if you've got a question, that's a really good place to go and ask. And yeah, just play. That's all I do.
Wow, I think it's run through all my interviews, and people, the gurus always talk about the fact that it's practice.
Exactly.
Since you're also reiterating the same thing, but this time showing us where to go for the data and as well as where to go for the resources to learn. That's powerquery.com.
Yeah.
So listeners, this is one way to viewers. This is one way to actually learn Power Query. Just go to powerquery.com. There are tons of materials now available that you would get the documentations, be able to probably learn one or two things. And key thing is go back and practice with the data set that you are interested in, which you could learn one or two things. Yeah. But Chris, what is your favorite transformation that fancies you in the query editor? So like you were like, wow, this is pretty cool and easy to use.
I would say the one that I've been using Power Query for quite a long time now, but I always really love unpivoting data. I think that's one of those things that if you try and do it in something like SQL, I always get massively confused by the syntax for doing that in SQL, and it seems like a fairly boring thing to do, really, doesn't it? Yeah. But actually, there's something about selecting some columns and unpivoting everything else. It's just magic. It works so easily, and it's something that I do so often. There are lots of cool things in Power Query nowadays. There are the kind of AI transformations, but to something like unpivoting, it never ceases to kind of amaze me how easy it is.
I think it was one of my catch for the query editor that just by selecting some few columns, you're able to unpivot your data. And anytime in a tutorial, in a class, and I do that, the whole class go like, wow,
Yes.
How was that?
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I
It's not the kind of thing that you go and meet up with your friends who work in lots of different jobs and talk about unpivoting data. They wouldn't get it. But anybody who's ever been given some data in Excel, where, for example, you'll have products along the rows and dates or months or years across the columns, that it's so fundamental for Power BI to understand how to model your data properly, and unpivoting is such a big part of that.
Okay, I mean, that comes to probably the star schema model that Power BI loves so much.
Exactly.
But you definitely have to unpivot your tables to be able to build star schemas in your model.
Yes.
All right. I think you talked about the AI functionalities. Can you highlight some of them in the query editor?
Sure. And in fact, actually, earlier this morning, before I talked to you, I was in a meeting and was able to show a customer key phrase extraction, wow. Where you can point to a text column and it will extract the key phrases, the kind of useful, the most important words and phrases in that text column. That's something that's only available with Power BI Premium or Premium per user. But the cool thing I think about Premium per user is that there were a lot of really useful bits of functionality like that were in the past only available to Premium, and that was something that was it excluded a lot of customers because a lot of small and medium-sized businesses just didn't have Power BI Premium, and so that there were a whole load of cool things that you just couldn't use. And also, if you're to go back to learning Power BI, if you're somebody at home, they've downloaded Power BI Desktop and you're playing around with things, not having Premium means that you can't use it at all, which means that people never really used it all that much. But I do think now that we've got Premium per user, which is $20 per user per month, still quite expensive for some people, but it's a lot cheaper than buying Premium. And that just means that you can now go out and use all of this extra functionality. And I was looking at it this morning and thinking, wow, there's a whole load of stuff here I've never really properly played with. There is, apart from the text analytics with sentiment analysis and key phrase extraction, there's kind of vision AI, where you can point it at some pictures and it will tell you what's inside the pictures and things. I've never had a reason to use that, but I can imagine it would be really handy in some cases.
Yeah, I think that I had a friend who works in the US, and they work with a number of substations, and they use Vision AI a lot. So I'm sure in scenarios like that, it would be very useful to them to be able to point to pictures and be given the name of the image or what is happening in there.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Okay, so that's for the query editor. The M language, do you have any special hacks that you would tell viewers that they can take to, like, before learning M language? What are the takeouts?
So I would say that the good thing about M is that you don't really need to use it as much as you would think. It's not like DAX. I mean, the thing I would say about DAX is that if you want to do anything more than really simple calculations, you have to learn DAX. There's no getting away from it. Whereas M, part of the reason I love Power Query is that I think it's a really, really easy tool to learn. And even though when you generate your queries in the Power Query editor, it generates M code in the background, for most people, you very rarely ever need to write any M. You can see the M and you can learn it that way, but it's not something you'll ever really need to write that much. So probably the thing I would say about learning M is that once you've learned the kind of basics of how a let statement is put together, what all of the syntax actually means, it's a really simple language. And there's not much going on in there. There's not much to learn. So once you learn the basics, it's really easy to understand what the query editor is generating. Also, what I would say is that, and again, I think this is due to the design of the language, it's actually really difficult to write bad M. If you write some M and it works, then it works, and it generally performs as well as it probably can. So it's not like DAX, where there are lots of different ways of doing something, and you can very easily write bad DAX that it performs badly. M, if it works, and you're good. And probably the last thing to say is that when I write M, I very rarely write a whole query starting from nothing. It's perfectly okay just to use the Power Query Editor to generate pretty much what you need, and then go in and edit and add a few more lines and change things that way. It's not one of those situations where you can use a nice friendly UI until you reach a certain point and then you've got to write everything in code. There's a really nice transition from building stuff in the UI and then maybe writing a little code or a little bit more or a bit more than that. So that makes it quite easy to learn.
Okay, I think that it's pretty much straightforward. That for my viewers, M language is not something that you have to bother yourself if you're not into very serious transformations. And normally, as Chris said, the key is always use the query editor tools in there, and sometimes just do a little tweaking based on your preference, or maybe add a new one or two lines. Mm-hmm. So pretty much about M. All right, so let's go into the data desktop modeling, which is the star schema. What is it with Power BI and star schema?
Well, you see, I think this is that one thing that really separates the people. Understanding how to model data is the key to really being successful with Power BI. Like I said, a lot of my job is going in and helping customers solve problems or making things work or making things faster, and everything comes back to modeling. Whenever I see a problem, it's very likely that the cause is bad modeling, and the solution is to remodel your data in a way that works better for Power BI. And it takes quite a long time, I think, to be able to look at something and be able to understand how it's modeled, because it's not easy or always intuitive to kind of model data in a particular way. But it is really important to getting good performance, to making everything simple and easy to do. And you've got to remember that there are often lots of different ways to model data. Some things work better in Power BI than others, but if you're going to spend time learning anything about Power BI, the first thing has to be to understand how to model data as a star schema. And there are lots of good books available on this. The idea of a star schema is not something that is exclusive to Power BI. Star schemas have been around for a long time before Power BI. And so if you were to look at books by Ralph Kimball, Ralph
Kimball.
Yeah, his books on data warehousing modeling, some of those books were written like 25, 30 years ago now, but they're still completely relevant.
I see. Okay, so One of the takeouts is that, I mean, if you want to really learn Power BI and be good at it, and you're going to spend a career in Power BI, one key is that you need to learn how to model data. Exactly. That is a star schema modeling of data. I think a lot of Excel users have this challenge coming into Power BI because Excel is a free range, helps you to do anything and nothing because it's a spreadsheet. So when Excel users are coming into Power BI, they always have this challenge of wide tables to, like we just talked about, the pivoting the data, as well as creating the dimensional tables and the fact table. Because Excel has made everybody a data analyst or a data user in a certain way, but it's normally for reporting. However, when you come into Power BI and you are analyzing, you need to unlearn that and be able to spend some time, like Chris has said, in learning the star schema, because everything in Power BI will hinge your performance of Power BI. You could do one or two DAX or transformations or one or two analysis, but as you go deeper, like Chris is saying, you will definitely have to go back to your model, because a lot of the challenges you solve as customer interfacing person in Microsoft require that you always have to check the customer's model, and which mostly is the case. So viewers, that is a tip there for desktop modeling in Power BI. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Excel, like you said, is that with Excel, there's no concept of modeling the data. You know, you lay out the data in Excel in the way that you want to see it, and that's often completely the wrong way for modeling the data for Power BI. So if you're coming from an Excel background, you know, and you just bring the data that you've got into Power BI in exactly the format that you've got in an Excel, then, you know, you can make things work, but it will often be actually more difficult than you expect. And just understanding what dimensions are and what fact tables are, it makes things so much easier.
Okay. So at least you can get some basic understanding on dimension and fact table. Personally, I had to learn database management before I started Power BI, so it helped me transition into Power BI easily because I had the basics in database management. So I'd also recommend that for viewers. If you want to be good at Power BI, make a career in them, go back to the basis of database management, understand facts and dimensional table, and you're good to go with the star schema. All right, so now let's go. We've now transformed our data, modeled our data into our star schema. Now we're coming into the other part of modeling, which is DAX. I remember Ruth Pozuelo, who is one of your MVPs, talking about the fact that DAX is after, it was a joke actually, that DAX is after calculus in terms of mathematics. After calculus, the most difficult thing is DAX. So how does someone master DAX? Which is, I mean, for viewers who are not aware of DAX, DAX is data analysis expression. Is the language that Power BI uses for all its analysis. I mean, there's no analysis that I think you want to do in the world that DAX, there's no a DAX for. You just have to learn. So how do we learn DAX?
That is the difficult thing, because if there's one bit of feedback we get from customers, it is that DAX is hard. Everybody finds DAX hard. So, you know, don't worry about it. Don't feel stressed that you find DAX hard. Everybody finds DAX hard. I mean, I find DAX hard when I write it. So it's something that everybody has to kind of struggle with. I would say there are a lot of really good resources out there. Obviously, my friends Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari. They have got a great website. They've built a whole business on DAX, and they've got so many great resources there. You know, YouTube videos, articles, blogs, and things. That's going to be probably one of the most important DAX resources. But again, if you look at that, they go into so much detail. They make sure they do everything right. That can be quite scary, and it can really kind of maybe not put you off, but it might make you think that DAX is just too difficult to learn. So probably the best thing to do, I would say, if you're just starting to learn DAX, is to have a look at a feature in Power BI called Quick Measures. So it's not a feature that people use very much. It's quite hidden away, but it's basically a whole bunch of predefined measure calculations. And you know, there are lots and lots of popular measures in there. So what I would say is that you should build your model, make sure it's all in a star schema, and then have a go at seeing what all of these different quick measures do. It's got a nice UI for generating the measures. Some of the descriptions aren't always really helpful, but some of them, for the time intelligence calculations, you can understand them quite easily. And then once you build a couple of quick measures, see how they work, that'll help you understand how DAX works and give you some ideas for how to kind of go forward and write your own calculations.
I don't know why everybody goes back to Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrara on DAX. It's always my go-to place, because if, like you rightly said, they've understood it, they've understood the engine, and are able to actually prescribe, always testing with either Tabular Editor or the DAX Studio to ensure that they understand its performance and everything. So, yeah. I mean, like Chris said, if you want to actually spend a lifetime in DAX, SQL BI guys are one of the go-to areas for DAX. But one thing he shared I've not even taken notice, the quick measures. I barely use them, but he's talking about the fact that you need to look at the quick measures as a way. It's like a standard template to help you understand how the thinking behind writing DAX is always about. So it's important that you would use quick measures as your library kind of to start learning the logic behind DAX and how you should write DAX. But most importantly, like he said, if your modeling is right, then it becomes easier learning from the quick measures, because you're going to get a lot of DAX written in that form of fit for the star schema. Yeah, so exactly. That's one thing. All right. So, I mean, for viewers, know that if you want to learn DAX, go to Alberto and Marco Russo of the SQL BI. That's if you want to learn the engine. But sometimes it's not only about learning the engine and how it works. It requires you to combine specific things, and the quick measures is one way to go about. One always way I advise with regards to DAX is that DAX is a language, and like any language, you start with the alphabet, which is the functions. The more alphabets of vocabularies that you have, the better your language. So learning the functions, because that's the building blocks to write, is like learning English. You learn A, B, you start combining A, B to get A, B, and maybe another letter to get a particular word, and you build on words to build sentences, then to paragraphs, and then you then write maybe poems and books out of that. But the key thing is start from the building blocks of alphabet, which is the functions, and that is what Alberto and Marco Russo would be a very good source. Ruth also does DAX Fridays, which it's very, very helpful if you want to. But I mean, as a business, even though you might learn these one thing I've learned was that in analysis, it's not just about throwing away some functions. It's about the right combinations to get the right solution for, because in business, you are not just writing that, you want the end result. You're analyzing, you are trying to get insights. So maybe you're doing a cohort. That's what you want to do. But understanding the language would help you. So thank you very much for the quick measure what I call a tool tip. That's your language. All right. Do you have anything to add on the DAX, learning of DAX?
So I would say there are lots and lots of different resources out there for learning DAX. I think you've already talked to Matt Allington. He's got a lot of great resources for learning DAX as well. But like I said, don't get worried about DAX being difficult. Just so long as you can achieve what you need to achieve, that's great. And probably, in terms of motivation, a lot of Power BI, and in fact, a lot of motivation that people get from Power BI is realizing that they can build really cool reports for their business and get a lot of recognition internally to say, hey, you're solving business problems and you look great to your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss. And DAX, I find, is going to be the way that you really impress people. All of the really advanced analysis requires DAX. And so if you learn DAX, that's how you're going to really be able to build those cool reports that have that analysis that nobody else was able to do.
Okay, so that's about it with regards, if you want to impress your boss, if you want to be a guru in Power BI, DAX is definitely a place you can't run away from, because you'd have to, because that's where the advanced analytics, because that's the key essence of what you're trying to do, drawing out the insights. There is this saying in the data world that you have to beat data until it tells you the truth. So it's like your analysis, advanced analysis, is like milking the data to rather let it tell you something that on the natural eye, it will not be apparent to anybody. And everybody will be like, wow, so this was what was happening. I mean, that's the essence of analytics. Because if it's already there, everybody knows it. But if you're able to tell a story out of something that is not readily available in the data, that makes you a pro, and people would begin to see you as resourceful and useful, because you can do something that nobody can see.
Yeah.
So exactly. I think that is very good. All right. So now let's look at analytics. That in terms of visualization, now you've built your transformation, you've built your models, you've built your DAX. Now you're going to visualize, because at the end of the day, you have to show your results. What are some of the things that you would talk about visualization?
So I think, well, the first thing to say, this is the part of Power BI that I have the most trouble with. DAX is difficult, but I've kind of learned DAX. I can do DAX, but visualization, I think, is one of the hardest things to do. Some people can build really beautiful reports, I guess, because they have a natural feeling for design and something. But I'm not one of those naturally artistic people. So I will always struggle to kind of build beautiful reports. But what I would say is that, some people have got that kind of natural ability. Some people have to learn things the hard way, like me. And if you don't have that natural ability, then probably the most important thing you can do is to kind of learn some of the kind of techniques for visualization. Go away and read up about which visual to use, which one you should use in which circumstances. There are lots of places where you can get some fairly simple tricks for making your reports look better. And not only look better, but so that they tell a story better, so people can look at them and read and understand them. And a lot of people who are maybe still very experienced at building reports still don't always understand the kind of basics of good visualization. Again, if you're thinking about one of those things that separates a kind of good Power BI person from a really brilliant Power BI person, it's being able to build not only pretty reports, but reports that are easy to read, choosing the right colors, using the right visuals, like don't use pie charts and things like that. It's not easy, but again, if you want to impress your boss, then those are the things you've got to really learn and understand.
I pretty much agree with what you just said. And I think it's like, Chris, with your background in IT and analysis services, people from that background always have that deficient, because you are so technically inclined that the art side is quite, because visualization is more of the art.
Exactly.
So very
that's completely right. If you think about designing Power BI reports, if you make it into an IT task, then you're completely missing something, because the number of really bad Power BI reports I've seen that were built by somebody in IT, it's just crazy. On my team, there are 2 people whose whole job is to be really good at designing Power BI reports. One of them, in fact, they've both got YouTube channels and blogs and things. One of them, Miguel Myers, he's actually a graphic designer. So he's somebody who's come from a graphic design background.
Myers.
Yes, yeah, and he's got a YouTube channel. But I suppose this goes on to another really important point, which is if you're learning Power BI, nobody can ever be good at all of Power BI. There is too much in Power BI for anybody to really know it all. Like you said, we're adding new features every single month. There is the M language, there's DAX, there's data visualization, there's modeling. Don't feel bad if you don't know it all, because nobody can know it all. Nobody possibly can know it all. There is nobody who is good at everything in Power BI. So what I would say is, if you're learning, it's all right to specialize. You should be okay at you need to know a little bit about everything, but maybe you can be the DAX person in your company or the Power Query person in your company. You really need to kind of think about Power BI development as a team-based thing rather than something that just one person can do, because it's too complicated. There are too many features. My whole job is learning Power BI and making sure I understand everything. And even I find it very hard to keep up with all of the new features that we add.
I get you. I mean, so that is one takeout, that you can't learn it all, and find a place that you are very good at and interested and specialized there. Get help where you can't. It's one thing that all the Power BI gurus have reiterated, for the fact that Power BI is a team sport. You need to have your team in place who would help you if you want to build stunning report, right from the transformation, maybe sometimes even the getting the data. You might have to get a DBA, database administrator, or somebody who's going SQL or some language to help you get the data into Power BI. Somebody would be very good at a query editor. Somebody could be very good at the modeling, and then the last DAX, and then the last which is the visualization. Like you're saying, sometimes you have to employ the services of a graphic designer, which I do a lot, to assist in getting the final test of the report. It looks like you're saying, to technical people, this looks like just what do you call it? Another soft side of the whole thing. So they don't put so much into it. But however, for the end users, they are normally the soft side of the organization. He's a decision maker. We are all appealed by what we see. So it's important to spend some considerable time over there, even though a lot of work would be on the transformation and modeling. It's important that people spend, because without a good report and a nice report, nobody would want to use it, even though it may contain the whole world's information. How you package it matters to everybody that is in the organization. Exactly. So I think that it is very, very much clear with what you've said, that get a team in place always, focus on what you are good at, and Power BI is a team sport. Wow.
And one of the things that we see on the CAT team, that the companies that are most successful with Power BI are the ones that have that internal culture of people helping each other. Because everybody can Google. You can always find the resources out there on the internet. There are lots of forums where you can post questions, but sometimes just having somebody inside your organization that you can talk to and get advice from, that's so much more useful. It's so much better to be able to talk to somebody who understands your data, who understands your particular use case, and can help you face to face as a colleague rather than just some random.
The mic went off. I couldn't hear you. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, you were talking about the use data, someone who has the use data, the use cases in the organization. If you could go over that.
Oh yeah. So what we see on the Power BI team are the organizations, the companies that are most successful with Power BI have that internal center of excellence set up where they can, colleagues inside the organization can talk to each other and help them, because everybody can Google. We can all go and find the resources on the internet, but sometimes it's more important to be able to talk to somebody inside your organization who understands your data.
Okay, so continue the last part, like the organization with center of excellence.
Yeah, exactly. And just have something inside the organization where you can bring people together so they can help each other. Where you can post announcements, where people can post questions and get answers. That seems to be a really, really important thing for companies as a whole to be successful with Power BI. That internal knowledge sharing, just being able to give people the opportunity to help each other.
Okay, that's great. All right, I think that we've come to an end on I think one last takeout is the fact that if organizations want to succeed with Power BI, they have to actually do it as a team sport, and organizations with already built center of excellence where people help one another are likely to be get the best out of Power BI. All right. Okay. So now let's go to the recent Microsoft Business Summit, where you talk about some new innovations that have come to the Power BI and the future of Power BI. Mm-hmm. So which of the announcements, let me just ask a general question, which of the announcements, the ones that really enthused you?
Well, I would say the things that get me excited are not always the things that get everybody else excited. But the thing that I am really, really excited about is the Excel integration. So, Power BI reports are great. I love Power BI reports, but I think from a kind of end user point of view, there are always some people who want their data in Excel, because Excel is also a great tool for analyzing data. Now, instead of exporting your data to Excel, Power BI gives you the ability to analyze in Excel, where you can link a pivot table directly up to a data set and explore that. That's something that's been around in Excel for a long time. Right from the very beginning, we've been able to do that. The cool thing that is just about to be released is that we can now make pivot tables work in Excel in the browser. So instead of just making a pivot table in Excel on the desktop work, you can create a pivot table, link it up to a Power BI dataset, and then publish that up to SharePoint or OneDrive, and then you can interact with the pivot table in the browser. And the important cool thing about that is that it means that you can now use Excel as a method for building reports that you can share easily. One thing that I see all the time is people who try to make Power BI reports behave like Excel pivot tables. Yeah, you can do that to a certain extent, but actually, if you want a pivot table and you want to explore your data, why not use a pivot table? Pivot tables, everybody knows pivot tables, everybody loves pivot tables, and a pivot table, a Power BI report is a Power BI report you build to answer a question where you know what the question is. A pivot table is great for exploring data when you don't know what the question is. You just want to see what's there and have a look and just browse through it and do it. That's something that Power BI reports don't have such great functionality for. That's something where I would always recommend Excel. Whereas now we can make that much easier for people because it's we can now use pivot tables in the browser. And as well as pivot tables, it's not just pivot tables. There are something called Excel cube formulas, which allow you to link individual cells to values in Power BI. So pivot tables are great for exploring data, but they grow and shrink. They're not really great for building really highly formatted reports. Whereas the Excel cube functions, which again have been around in Excel for a long time, make it really easy to build very highly formatted reports in Excel. And they also work in the browser now. So you'll be able to use those to build reports in the browser. And it just gives you a whole new set of tools for building reports for people. If somebody wants a nice interactive dashboard with great visuals, use a Power BI report. If you want a pivot table, just put a pivot table in Power BI. If you want, a kind of financial report with all of that Excel functionality that people want, use cube functions and publish that report to Power BI. It's great that we've got so many different tools for building reports on top of your data in Power BI, because no one tool is going to be good at everything. And Excel, I think, gives you certain things that are actually harder to do, quite hard to do in Power BI.
Very true. So I see Microsoft integrating its products to give us the best in terms of productivity, and that SharePoint, Excel integration, and Power BI, and Teams. Yeah. So clearly it's some integration strategy right there. All right. So what are the other announcements? So as those who missed out for the Power BI Summit, the Business Summit, what are the other announcements with the future of Power BI?
So a couple of different things. We've got some great new advanced analytics functionality where you'll be able to kind of look at a Power BI report and it will tell you interesting analysis based on what it sees there. This is part of our kind of ongoing investment in AI and machine learning functionality. Everybody's talking about AI and machine learning. I would say from a Power BI point of view, we're not interested in doing kind of complex data science. What we are interested in is taking the power of AI and machine learning and making it available to everybody. Because I'm not a data scientist. I don't write Python or R. I don't really know anything about machine learning or these algorithms. But I still want to be able to use some of the cool things that you can do with this. And if you look at what we've done with Power BI, things like the key influencers visual or the new smart narratives and this very new advanced analytics functionality. It's all about making AI and machine learning easy to use for everybody. So, you don't need to know anything about algorithms, but you can point it at your report and it will tell you something that you didn't know, hopefully.
See, so that's for the advanced analytics. I followed the whole announcement, and I mean, it was pretty much cool stuff, especially as done on the service. So now when you publish, so for viewers who did not get the chance to watch, so advanced analytics is a new update that is coming from Microsoft, where you could actually look into your insights into any data that you publish. So as Chris is saying, Microsoft is empowering organizations, individuals, and teams to be able to make use of technology without understanding the technology, but how best you can get to your bottom line, which is what businesses seek to do. So there are capabilities they are giving users, so as without understanding, like Chris is saying, advanced machine learning stuff, these things are running behind the scenes for you, and you can utilize them to get your insights for decision making. I think one key thing is also the anomaly detection, which it was released some time back. But I mean, that's one thing that Microsoft is doing for its users, empowering the users to be able to do things that you may not understand, but you need to use them. And so apart from advanced analytics, what else?
So the other big announcement was goals, which is a new feature. It's premium only, but this is a new feature we've got to allow you to track your goals. A lot of people use Power BI to track various different KPIs or metrics for the company. And yes, you can build a Power BI report to do these things, but the new goals functionality makes it easy to assign a goal to a person, to be able to track it over time, to see how well you're doing, to look at all of your goals in a single scorecard. And that's something that I think a lot of companies and a lot of organizations will be interested in, just to be able to use Power BI and the data inside Power BI to be able to track the various goals they've got. Because if you're a company that's interested in data and making sure that people use data correctly to make decisions, you're probably also going to be very interested in using data to track people's performance or the company's performance and make sure that your company or your people are actually meeting the goals that you've set them.
I see. I think one exciting feature that personally my organization will be using much would be the goals. We had built a scorecard to actually track a lot of KPIs. However, we did that manually. I mean, we had to write a lot of codes to be able to track that. So with the coming in of goals, I remember sending the article to my boss and was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. I think one feature too that was announced was the extension of tables to include spark lines. I mean, and that's one cool feature to that. Could you talk more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great example of kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, of where we really listen to our customers. I mean, spark lines was something that, to be honest, it's something that people have been asking for a very long time. It's something you can do in Excel. It's something you can do in lots and lots of other data visualization tools. Spark lines are just small charts that you can fit inside a cell, and they're really great as a way of giving somebody an overview quickly of how, for example, things are doing by time. And yes, it's one of those things where I think, we listen to what people are asking for. This was a really, really top voted idea. It was something that I think was not always not as easy for us to implement as you would think, but because so many people wanted it, we listened and we decided to go away and spend time to do it. And yeah, you're right.
It used to be in the Power KPI, that was very hard to use. One of the visuals, the Power KPI or one of your KPI visuals, but it was pretty much difficult to use. And it was exciting to hear that you would come up with the spark lines.
Yeah, it's like small multiples we introduced a few months ago. That was another kind of basic data visualization thing that people have asked for a long time.
Yeah, that was also excellent. Any other announcements that you'd want to highlight on?
Well, there are a whole bunch of fairly maybe small things. So, for example, the paginated reports visual, where, for example, it's going to allow you to embed a paginated report inside a Power BI report. That's going to be pretty cool. The Power Automate visual, I think there's going to be a whole load of really cool things we can do with that. So, you're not only looking at a Power BI report, but you can then click a button and take some action. If you're interested in the Power Platform and Power BI, then Power Automate is another product in the Power Platform. I love Power Automate. I'm not sure I'm that good at it, but there are some really amazing things you can do with that. And the combination of Power BI and Power Automate, just to be able to see something in a report and then take action to make something happen. I think that there's going to be some really amazing use cases that people come up with for that.
I think people have already started with the emailing reports, exporting to Excel, exporting to PDF, like search buttons. Already people have started doing some use cases. That's also brilliant. I'm planning to probably do 1 or 2 trials in the coming weeks and probably publish it to my viewers, how you can use the Power Automate.
Yeah.
All right. So it's been an amazing chat, Chris. Your last words, to my viewers about Power BI and the whole fray of Power BI.
Well, I'd say that the thing I really like about Power BI is that it's just so exciting. There's always so much to see, so much to use. It's so popular as well. It's growing really, really quickly. Unfortunately, I don't think I can share the exact numbers with you, but there's a crazy number of people using Power BI around the world. The growth is absolutely amazing. And it's so great for me to talk to people all around the world using Power BI, to get their different perspectives and understand what they like and things. So yeah, Power BI I think is probably one of the best things that Microsoft has done in the last couple of years. I'm biased, obviously, but our aim is to be as popular as Excel. Now, Excel is very popular and it will take a long time to get there. But, we are growing very, very quickly, and hopefully we can get there in my lifetime. I'd love to see everybody learning Power BI in school or in colleges, and the way they learn Excel today.
Okay. So, viewers, you've heard from the insiders. There's a goal to make Power BI like Excel, to be free everywhere you go, everybody using it. So why don't you catch on, from now? That's always been my advice to people. I remember I had a guest lecture in University of Aberdeen in the UK, Scotland, on energy, using data analytics in the energy market. And one thing I told the students, why don't you hop on now when it's green, so as by the time it catches on with everybody, you would have been an expert and people would be coming to you for help. So I think that's one takeout for my viewers. People have been asking me why Power BI. It's what it is. There's a goal to make it everywhere for all business, and it's very useful to actually gain insights for your organization. Thank you very much, Chris. It's been an amazing discussion with you so far. Thank you for your time. And hopefully, maybe I'll catch you on another time for a different discussion. Maybe we'll pick one particular topic and drill and dive into it. So viewers, Chris Webb has been my guest, and I hope you enjoyed this interview. I'll catch you on the next. Bye.
Thanks a lot,
tuned. Subscribe to my channel. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Correct. So I've stopped.